This is Suit Up Sports. Suit Up Sports. Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Welcome back to Suit Up Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, and joining me now from the Tom McShay Show and ESPN Insider, Steve Muench. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to see a guy on the show who has the same color beard as I do. You know, there's not enough of us representing. That looks good.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to shave my head soon too, man. The hair is it's not good. It's going.
Yeah, I think when I was 26, I decided it was time to let it go, you know, and not be one of those dudes that hang on and, you know, get made fun of behind your back.
Get the horseshoe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wasn't gonna be the white George Jefferson. You know, I couldn't do that. Thanks again for joining us, man. And I know that you hopefully have gotten a little bit of break after the draft. You know, I know you guys were working damn near 24 hours a day, it seems, and you guys do a great job on Tom McShay Show as well as on ESPN Insider.
Thanks, man.
But the Panther fans here, you know, after the draft, like most teams, are fired up, you know, and every team loves the hope that the draft brings. And usually they love all the players that they get, you know, maybe an argument here or there. The Panther fans, you know, seem to be very happy with this draft. And, you know, when you look at the grades and all those things, for the most part, they got, you know, pretty good grades, and most analysts seem to love the draft. And watching yourself and Todd, you know, I guess it was last week, maybe the week before, when you guys were kind of breaking down some of the players that you did or didn't like as far as where they were drafted, not necessarily the player. But, you know, Ted McMillan was a guy that when we drafted him, when the Panthers drafted him right away, I was mad. I wanted one of the defensive ends. If we were going to take a receiver, I wanted one of the tight ends. So, you know, I kind of understand exactly what you and Todd were saying. But then the more that I started watching McMillan's film since we drafted him and listening to the interviews, because one of the things that really bothered me was the comment he made as a freshman about not watching tape. And then you hear some of the stuff about the practice habits. And I know that was one of the things that Todd and yourself, you know, talked about on your show quite a bit. After the draft, and now that there's been some interviews with him where he's been able to address that, do you feel any better about the Tet pick at 8, or do you still feel about the same?
I feel about the same, but I will say this: don't lump me in with that lunatic. I mean, he was. I think he had Ted as his number 7 wide receiver. I had Ted as my number 1 receiver.
Right.
So I think he for whatever reason, he just didn't love Ted McMillan coming out, and he does give his reasons. He said, you know, the comp I think is Drake London. I think that's a good receiver to comp him to, and he's not exactly as fierce a competitor as Drake London is on tape.
Right.
That being said, I feel the same way I do about it then as I do now, because they were kind of in a tough spot picking at 8 in this draft class. You know, there was some elite prospects, and some of them weren't at premium positions, and none of them were at wide receiver.
Right.
You get to 8, and would I have gone edge? Yes. Would I have gone Jalen Walker from Georgia? Yes. But the league kind of spoke on that too. It's not like Jalen Walker came off the board in the next pick or the pick after that. He went 15.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, Carolina wasn't the only one who had some reservations about taking Jalen Walker that early. So when you look at that Ted McMillan pick, we'll see how it works out. I mean, he's a big-bodied wide receiver that I think, you know, will be good for Bryce Young. It gives him another big target on the outside. I think he's a very good player. I just think 8 is rich. So we've done this with the quarterbacks all year. We might as well do this exercise with the wide receivers.
Yeah.
If Federer McMillan came out last year, he probably would have gone after Brian Thomas, who went 22.
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of draft that we just had. It was very deep at certain positions, and I think that Carolina did a great job of taking advantage of the depth of the edge class and getting a couple guys on day 2 that really could help them.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, they were kind of jammed at 8 where there wasn't that elite premium prospect. So they took a guy that I think is going to help them.
Yeah, and they also, you know, tried to trade down, I guess, and maybe hope that he would still be there, or take one of those defensive ends that were there. Like you said, could have been Walker at 15, but I guess they didn't find a partner that gave them what they wanted.
Easier said than done, right? Like, well, I hear all these fan bases say, oh, we should trade back. Great. Who's trading up? Especially again, in this class. I mean, who are they going to trade up to get? There was no hot name or big time prospect that, the Carolina didn't have a need for, and then another team was going to be really eager to go get.
Yeah. When one of the things also that made me feel a little better about the Ted McMillan pick, and I wonder if you look at this at all, or is it just something that me, when I'm putting my fan glasses on for the Panthers, looks at? But there was a lot of stuff that came out that the Rams were trying to trade up high enough to try to get Ted, and when I hear a team like the Rams who seems to nail the draft, and they seem to do it without first round picks, more often than not, and they definitely seem to nail the wide receiver position, the fact that they must have liked him enough to try to get up when, obviously the Carolina's going to be 8th, Dallas was probably going to take him at 12, but so they would have had to get somewhere in between there. Does that make you feel better about a pick as a fan, or is that just kind of, it's not like the New York Giants were trying to trade up to get him, who have not hit wide receivers.
It's a ricochet shot for the Giants fans out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm a Giants mother team, so I watched. We don't pick receivers that well. We finally got one last year, but the Rams seemed to nail him. So when I heard that McVay liked him a lot and was trying to get up and get him, or was at least interested, that made me feel a little better about the pick as well.
Yeah, I mean, not only as a fan, but as an analyst, right? Like, I think that when you see that, and there's other positions for other teams where this happens, I say to myself immediately, alarm bells go off. Well, what is he seeing, or what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? And again, I had Tedero McMillan as my top wide receiver.
Right.
It is interesting that the Rams are willing to trade up. I listened. I did my prep for the show. I listened to your draft recap the other day. I just went for a walk, listened to the whole thing. I thought it was a great point. There's other positions. You see this. I was talking about this the other day on our show, the McShay show, about the Eagles offensive lineman that they drafted late, because their offensive line coach is a genius.
Yeah.
So when you see of other evaluators who have a history of picking well at a position, and they have an interest in a player that your team took, I absolutely agree with you. I think that's a great sign that this could be a good player. Yeah,
well, Panther fans hope so. You mentioned that the second, third round, the Panthers addressed defensive end, and again, I think that's another thing that when they went receiver at number 1. You knew they were going to have to take a defensive end in the second round. And we also knew that it was deep in that position. So hopefully they got the right one. Nick Scorton is a guy who, again, there's some analysts that think he could be the next great defensive end. There's other that think maybe not. His lack of production at A&M compared to Purdue. How much with him, before you get into his breakdown, how much do you weigh his lack of production at Texas A&M from the fact that they did have him gain 20 to 25 pounds and play a little differently at A&M than he did at Purdue?
What's interesting about it is I think that played a role. I also look at that defensive line and I think about how talented they were, and then their lack of sacks. It's crazy to me. Like, you look at Shamar Stewart as a player that was talked about a lot. Has a higher upside, I think, than Scorton, but had literally, almost no production.
Yeah.
And they just didn't get to the quarterback as a group. You look at their lack. You say the lack of production for Scorton. He was 3rd in the SEC for tackles for loss. So yeah, the sack numbers dropped, but he also led Texas A&M that had Shamar Stewart and had Shamar Turner, the talented defense tackle. He was their leading sack guy at 5.5 or something. Now, he had 10 the year at Purdue.
Right.
What was fascinating to me about that is, yes, I do think some of the added weight played a role. So, I like the fact that he slimmed down. Some of this, I get concerned when guys show up at the combine and they're 30 pounds lighter.
Yeah.
It's what are we playing at? Just stay at that weight. I don't really care if you run, we get so caught up in these speeds so much, and it's not a great indicator all the time. So I get worried about that, but I think that's more of his natural weight. And when you're looking at the Carolina scheme, and I think he's going to play outside linebacker for them, that's what the weight you want him at. So I think that was a good sign for him that he's at that weight. What's fascinating to me, though, is if you look at the Purdue tape, and as good as he was, and I think he led the Big Ten in sacks when he was at Purdue in 2023, they dropped him a ton. He had like 100 plus snaps dropping into coverage.
Yeah.
And he's really competitive in that area. He does a great job with it. Now, I think that he didn't run. So you wonder how fast or how quick he is. Again, I'm one of those guys. I don't really care. I just don't.
Yeah.
Unless there's a glaring issue on tape, or he shows up and runs like a time that's an outlier that, no, okay, now we need to be concerned. I'm not really worried about it because the guy wins on tape. He's a better pass rusher now than Shamar Stewart is, who went earlier than him. But the question is whether or not he has that ceiling. But you're talking about a guy you got in the second round who's going to come in and make an immediate impact. I think it's a good pick.
Right. And then, they went defensive end again with Prince. And I always mess his last name up. Uman Mielen. I'll get it right.
Uman Mielen, I think. I'm the worst with this.
Me too. His name is just Prince.
Yeah, the coaches couldn't say. Yeah, listen. The coaches down at the Senior Bowl were asking him over and over to repeat himself, and they still couldn't get it right.
Well, yeah, I'm the worst at that. And the Panthers actually released Javon Clowney today. So
I didn't heard that.
Yeah, it saved 7.
Yeah.
They had to dump, I think, 8 guys before their rookie camp today, and Clowney was one of them. Saves them, I think, $7.7 million on the cap. But taking Prince in the 3rd round now, you've got 2 defensive ends. He seems like he's ready to go right now when it comes to rushing the passer.
What's interesting about him is that it's almost the flip side of the Texas A&M situation. Both are super talented defensive lines, but the Ole Miss led the SEC in sacks, and they had dudes everywhere. I mean, they have Jared Ivey, they had JJ McGeese on the inside, they had Walter Nolan, the 1st round pick, defensive tackle. Then you had Princely Umanmielen, and they had the other kid Perkins, who's a sophomore, who's undersized, but he's a guy that we're already keeping an eye on because he's so explosive. Right. So you look at that sack production, you're like, maybe you're not overwhelmed by that sack production, but remember, everyone was getting after the quarterback there. So everyone was eating, which meant that one guy wasn't going to get the lion's share of it. One of the things I really love about Princely Umanmielen, I hope that's correct because he deserves to have his name said right, is the way he sets up some of his moves. And specifically, I'm a speed to power guy. And if you can win the speed, can you transition from speed to power? And I think he could start upfield, get that offensive tackle to get on his heels a little bit, open up, and then pivot and run right through the offensive tackle. I think he hasn't reached his full potential. But again, we're talking about a guy getting in the 3rd round. And what's interesting to me when I was looking at one of the themes of the Carolina draft is they took advantage of the depth at certain positions like edge.
Yeah.
Wide receiver was not great. It was just not a great class. So that's a questionable pick there. You're going to be concerned about, was Tedero McMillan worth the 8th overall pick?
Yeah.
But some of these guys in normal draft cycles would have gone a lot earlier. I think Nick Scorton had a chance to go a lot earlier if we don't have the same kind of depth in that group. I think Princely Umanmielen is a guy that you're talking about as a 2nd round pick. Move all these guys up around in normal draft cycles, and I think that Dan Morgan took advantage of that in a good way.
The next pick in the 4th round, Trevor Etienne, that was one that I had a feeling they would take a running back again. It was a very deep running back class. They took a chance on Brooks last year from Texas, tore his knee, and they just put him on the injured reserve list today.
I got to tell you, man, I'm so sad about that situation. I don't know if there's anyone who loved Brooks more than I did coming out of college. You talk about that Alabama game where Texas beat Alabama in 2023, and I know we should talk about the new players. I get it, but
no, that's all right.
Jonathan Brooks is, he's one of my favorites. He beat Alabama. If you watch the end of that game, they put the entire offense on his back. He refused to get tackled. I mean, they just ran the ball out on Alabama. They ran the clock out on Alabama. A lot of it was because of Brooks. So I hope he gets healthy. I hope he's able to get back to his form. It's sad what's gone on so far.
Yeah, and he's on the right team to do it. Thomas Davis obviously came back from 3 of those ACL tears and had a great career. So hopefully he can replicate that. And the Panthers are, running back, they're in good shape with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, who they signed this year, but 2 1,000 yard backs last season. So when they took Trevor Etienne, I kind of was surprised that would be the guy they took, but I did know that if they're going to take one, they're probably going to take one that's a different type of back than what they already had, which Etienne is. What are your thoughts on him? Because I almost thought his Florida tape was better than his Georgia tape.
I think he's banged up last year, right? I think that was part of it. He missed some time with that rib injury. I don't think he was ever really 100%, or there was times he wasn't 100%. I kind of looked at him as he's sub 200 pounds. The production was good, but not great because he was banged up. And, going into his evaluation, I'd watch, you see a ton of the TV tape, right? And going into his evaluation, I wasn't overly excited about watching his tape, and then I watched him, and he grew on me. I mean, he's a quick and he's a tough runner, and I think when you talk about that quickness, not only in the running game and the way he hits holes and accelerates through the line of scrimmage once he makes up his mind to where he's going, in the passing game, when he catches the ball, man, he gets north-south in a hurry, and I think he's someone who can make an impact in that kind of a role going forward. So I get it. I'm with you. I think we're going to flip back to the other side of this now. very deep running back class. There were some very good running backs that went after him, like Devin Neal, the kid from Kansas.
Yeah.
I will continue to say how high I am on him. And Damian Martinez, the running back from Miami. Now, again, he's more of a thumper, and I get that that's maybe not what they were looking for. But Brashard Smith, the kid from SMU who went to Kansas City, there are other options there. I get it. So I understand. And again, in terms of need, but this is a great running back class. And I think Etienne's a guy that, normally would go in that range. So it's not a bad pick. It's just one that maybe you would have gone in a different direction.
Right. The next guy that they took in the 4th round was a guy that I honestly didn't know much about, and I'm a big Notre Dame fan. So once I started watching his film after we drafted him, I realized, that's that guy, and that's the Lathan Ransom guy, the safety from Ohio State, who you watch his tape, and the dude just seems like he loves to hit, great against the run. I guess the question, and maybe why he was available, in the 4th round, was maybe his speed. But what are your thoughts on Lathan?
He ran a 4.53 at his pro day. I'm not worried about the speed.
Yeah.
I think he's a great value there. And when you talk about it, I'll just talk, get to the point of physical, downhill, I think you called him, he had bad intentions the other day, I think you said about him.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with you. I remember him running the alley and meeting Jordan James, the running back out of Oregon. Now, those are two guys. Jordan James may not be a big dude. Those are two guys that are rugged. Those are two guys that crave contact. And that was a battle that Lathan Ransom won on that play. I mean, he just got downhill, met him in the hole, and stopped him in his tracks. And it was one of those plays where if you're looking at a guy who maybe is a middle round pick, you look at that play and you go, there's a little something there. There's a little something there. I also like guys that are on championship teams. He's a good leader. I like all of that. He may not be the most fluid guy, but we're talking about a 206-pound safety,
right,
who ran a 4.53 40, coming off a national championship, who is tough, who's a good leader. I mean, when you're looking at that range of the draft, I love that pick.
Yeah, he fits what Dan Morgan says he wants to, which are dogs. He wants guys that love football and get after it. How is he in coverage? Because I know a lot of Panther fans are wondering now who's going to kind of be our deep safety, and that doesn't necessarily fit his game, or does it?
I don't think it really does in terms of a center fielder, free safety type. One of the things that we, Todd and I, in our experience of going through this and what are important traits for defensive backs, and one of them is arm length. And when you see short arms, and Lathan Ransom has short arms, you want to see how he is in terms of contesting the ball at the catch point. And he's not. That's one of his weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
It just is. Like, he's going to lose some 50-50 balls. He's not a playmaker. He didn't come up with a lot of picks. That's not what his game is. So that would be my concern about playing him over the top. And your length helps you recover. Some guys, it's not as big of a deal. Like Jahdae Barron, who is the corner from Texas, has very short arms. I don't understand it. I watch his tape, and he looks like he has the craziest wingspan in the game. The way he plays the ball. But when you see Lathan Ransom, there's times you're like, man, you're in perfect position right there, and you just weren't able to finish. The flip side is he's smart.
Yeah.
Again, he's got good range. He's smart. He's going to be physical. He's not going to get caught out of position. He's going to be super competitive. I don't think he's great in coverage, but I don't think he's a liability like maybe some other teams or evaluators saw it.
Gotcha. Talking with Steve Muench from the Todd McShay Show and ESPN Insider about the Panthers draft. Next pick they took was Cam Jackson, the defensive tackle out of Florida, a big 6'6" dude that I know the Panthers are hoping can help slow down the run to go along with some of the free agents they signed. Panthers, no secret, worst defense in the history of the NFL last year, so a lot of holes to fill on that side.
Sounds so bad.
It sure
is so bad.
Oh, man, it was. To watch it every Sunday, it was really bad. What are your thoughts on Cam Jackson?
I love me some Cam Jackson, and I get why he goes where he goes in this part of the draft, right? Because you're looking for pass rushers early on, and Cam Jackson's not that guy. I will say this about Cam Jackson. He will push the pocket on you, and he will move the quarterback off his spot, but he is the kind of player that if he plays 10 years and had 10 sacks for his career, it wouldn't surprise me.
Right.
What you are getting is an elite run defender. He is a powerful, quick dude who's going to help clog up that middle. He's going to make some plays. He's going to get off some blocks. The only concern I have with him is that, and again, I love his tape, is he's 6'6". I like 6'2" nose tackles,
right?
Because they have that natural, low center of gravity. a little easier for them to get under blockers. And I do see that with Cam a little bit where he plays high. But when he keeps his pads down, man, he's a terror. He is tough to move off the ball, and he can make some plays. I mean, again, we're talking about that area of the draft. That's a good pick to me.
Yeah, and the Panthers stayed with the SEC, Big Ten, obviously, Pac-12 with a couple picks there. But it seems like back in the day, the Panthers would not touch the SEC as much as you go every other. I mean, hell, Philadelphia's made a living out of taking, when in doubt, choose a guy from Georgia or from the SEC, and it works out.
I mean, the Philadelphia defense might as well be that Georgia national champion.
Yeah, no doubt.
Crazy.
It's worked out for him. In the 5th round, the Panthers took Mitchell Evans, the tight end out of Notre Dame. And I mentioned earlier, I'm a big Notre Dame fan. I know he's coming off the injury. It took him a while to get going last year. But once he did, I thought this was a great pick in the 5th round.
This, to me, feels like stealing. And I'll be honest with you. We do one of the things that within what Todd and I do, or the media evaluators, we get judged on is our top 100 players, right? Who's in your top 100? When did they come off the board? If they don't all come off the board, it's a bad sign, right? And usually you want your top 100 off by the end of, the 4th round.
Right.
I have Mitchell Evans in my top 100, and he came off at the end of the 5th round. And you know what? I don't care. I feel good about the evaluation. Maybe the league didn't see it. Maybe there was some, he obviously had the ACL a couple of years ago. Maybe there's some durability concerns that I didn't know. And the league saw some reports and they were concerned about that. We'll see how that all plays out. I don't know. Yeah. I'm not going to get involved in that, so I don't know. But on tape, man, this feels like stealing to me. You talk about him because he's a big body guy, 6'5", 258. He can block a little bit. And I think everyone's like, oh, he can block a little bit. He tied for the second quickest 10-yard split for the tight ends of the combine. This guy's got a little more to him than like, oh, he's going to be our blocking tight end and our reliable check down and all that. He's a dude. He is a guy that I think could be you may have gotten your number 1 tight end in the 5th round and late 5th round at that with this pick. And I think the other thing is if it works out the way that I think that probably Dan Morgan envisions it and the way I think that it could, because again, I'm very high on the player. Yeah, that allows you to slot Sanders, who you took last year, who I really like coming out of Texas, but is more of a receiving tight end. Right. You get to move him into that role. So now you got guys in their right spots. Sanders can take off a little bit, do what he does without having to worry about some of the other stuff. And then you have Mitchell Evans as your number 1 tight end who can help you on the goal line. He's going to be I don't think he's going to be a great blocker, but he's going to be competitive. He's going to hold up at least. Yeah, man, this was my favorite pick, the Carolina me, because and I liked a lot of them. Yeah. But again, this is a guy I had in my top 100. Yeah. Because I liked him that much.
Yeah. And you and Todd like to say a lot, we'll tell you if a player's going to be good when you tell us what team he's going to be on. And I think that's 100% correct. And when the Panthers got Mitchell Evans, I thought to myself, this is a perfect team for him because of what you just said. Number one, they've got Tommy Tremble, another Notre Dame tight end, and they have Sanders, the rookie from last year, and now Mitchell. But they haven't had a really strong tight end room since Greg Olsen was here for sure. Right. And now you've got 3 guys that each do a little something different. And look, you go to the tape just in the college playoffs and the championship. Mitchell Evans was making some plays. Downfield as well. Making some guys miss. So I was excited, and I think the Panthers are a perfect fit for him. Yeah. Last pick they took, and this is the player that I think has the Panther fans most excited because
I'm so surprised by this.
And here's
the other day. Go ahead. Sorry, I don't.
No. Here's why I think they're so excited because. Again, the Panthers wide receiver room has left a lot to be desired for a long time. They traded up last year to get Legette at the end of the 1st round. And he had an okay year, showed some flashes, was good in the red zone, but didn't do what everybody had hoped he did, at least in year 1. Adam Thielen is as steady as they come. And that he's going to catch the ball when Bryce puts it there. Then they take Tet. You mentioned earlier, another big body, big catch radius, whatever. But the one thing that they're lacking is that explosive, little short, fast receiver that's elusive and hard to catch. Legette's got great speed once he gets going, but the Panthers really haven't had that quick, fast receiver that you can put in the slot or whatever that, and also in special teams that can make people miss. And people just think that he's the guy. Now, he may not even make the team. We don't know. But what were your, but what were your thoughts on him? Because I did watch every Colorado game this year, just because, a lot of times just because of the drama that surrounded every game, and
right. I mean,
what was going to happen. And when he did play, I mean, he made plays. I mean, he got hurt some, but he did make some plays. And I think in the combine, or I forget, maybe it was in the Senior Bowl, he had the fastest, mile per hour running down the field of any receiver. Definitely a smaller type of receiver. But what were your thoughts on Jimmy Horn Jr.?
I like him. I wouldn't be. I've heard. First of all, am I correct? Tell me this: are people comparing him to Steve Smith?
Well, that's what a lot of the Panther fans are hoping. I think he becomes. Obviously, he doesn't have the build that Steve had. I mean, he might be the same height, but he doesn't have the muscle. I mean, Steve is a thick dude. I mean, he's got muscles on top of muscles. So yeah, but people are hoping that people are hoping that he becomes that. But yeah, no doubt.
And the other thing about Steve Smith was he was a smaller receiver, but he was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but he was an outside guy. He took it to outside corners. He wasn't a slot. So if you're looking for that guy, I'm not sure you're looking for Steve Smith. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
And I'll start with the negative so I don't, rain on everyone's parade about it.
Now we want it.
The frame scares me, man. I mean, we're 5'8", 174. I mean, I think Steve Smith was like 195. That's 20 pounds. That's different, man. Yeah. And he ran well. He ran in the 4.4s, but he didn't run a 4.3. He's not and he runs well on tape. By the way, I think that's more important. I'm going to give a quick side note because it'll kind of back up Jimmy Horn Jr. I hope we get more into that. I hope we get more into the tracking guys' speed in games.
Yeah.
Kind of get away from this stopwatch. How fast is he on the track? Because I do think that stuff matters. So I hope we get into that more. And it is interesting that he ran that well in pads in a game.
Yeah.
And you do see that on tape. He's a guy who he can threaten after the catch and he can make some plays downfield, but he's not going to win a lot of 50-50 balls downfield. He just doesn't have that frame for it. Right. The other thing I'll say about him is I think he can help you in the return game. I think he's really good in the return game. Wouldn't be surprised if he made a push to be the return man in both the punt returner and as a kickoff returner.
Yeah, I
like him, and I do think you can find those productive slot receivers late. And I do think he gets in and out of breaks like a lot of smaller, quicker guys can do. It does surprise me that you're getting Teteroa McMillan and you're getting Nick Scorton and I'm listening to your pod. People are fired up about Jimmy Horn Jr., man.
They are, man. They really are. It's like I said,
I love about the fan base though is that they're they are excited about it. They didn't turn it off after night 2, man. They got excited about the guy that got late.
No doubt, and I really do think it's just because we haven't had a receiver who's fast and elusive and makes guys miss. And Steve Smith was obviously a great punt returner, kickoff returner as well. So that's where I think fans hope that he becomes the next guy. I want to ask you just about a few, and I know you got to go, so I did want to ask you about a few undrafted free agents that they signed. They hit. They got lucky last year when they took Jalen Coker as an undrafted free agent out of Holy Cross, and they gave him, I think, the maximum you could give undrafted free agent to come here, and he had a really solid rookie year. Jacoby George, the receiver from from Miami, they gave him the same thing. They gave him the maximum that you could give a undrafted free agent, I believe, to get him here. What are your thoughts on him?
He was the one guy I didn't write up. I mean, I had Sam Brown. I wrote him up. I thought he was a guy that had some upside. I don't think he got drafted. I don't know where he went. Restrepo, I thought should have got drafted. I don't care about the 40 time. I mean, it's 4-8, whatever. Jacoby George is an undersized receiver. I mean, he's another guy that, they've taken some smaller guys now. 5'11", 172. He's going to have to make his living working out of the slot. I wasn't overwhelmed when I watched the tape that Jacoby George was sticking out all that much. So we'll see. They saw something. Again, they saw something that I didn't see when I was watching Miami's tape, and that's fine. I could be wrong, and they could be right.
Did you happen to do any tape on Corey Thornton, the receiver from Central Florida?
He's another one I haven't watched, to be honest. Can I tell you the one guy that I heard, because I heard you guys talking about the other UDFAs, and it surprised me that this name didn't come up because I love him and gave him a draftable grade. Is the defensive lineman Jared Harrison Hunt out of SMU. And he was a Miami transfer. Mm-hmm. And that SMU front, I don't know if people realize how good it was, man. They get after people. And what I loved about him is I think that he's in their scheme, he's going to play that defensive end 4 eye roll. And then like we look at these base 3-man fronts, and every team's multiple, so he'll also play some 3 technique. But he's a guy that wins with his hands a lot, and I love that about interior defensive linemen. He gets off blocks. He's quick. I think he was a very underrated guy, and I think when you're looking at an undrafted free agent, I'm talking about a player I thought could have gone in the 5th round.
Wow.
And you get him as an undrafted free agent. I think that's kind of a big deal to me.
That's awesome. Well, man, thanks for joining us. I'm going to end. I want to ask you something not Panther related real quick. You study all these players and have seen, more tape than anybody. If I had to say, all right, Steve, I want you to give me like a couple offensive rookies and a couple defensive rookies that in 5 years from now, you would, bet the house that these dudes are going to be Pro Bowl studs.
Put me on the spot.
Yeah, who you like there? I know, and the reason I asked that question is because when the Panthers did pick at 8, and took Ted, or whether even if they would have took Jalen Walker, there was some guys there that later in the draft you almost feel were more of a lock, like a Malachi Starks, or guys like that you almost felt were just so safe to be a lock and be very good, and so obviously you're not going to take that at number 8, but I'm always curious when I talk to guys like you who study this stuff so much that, who you really feel is just a lot to be a stud in 5 years.
So I could sit here and be like, oh, Ashton Jeanty, Boise State running back, is going to be really good.
Yeah.
And I could tell you that, Tyler Warren's going to be really good. I like how he ended up with the Colts and Colts. I'm not going to do it. Right. I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to pick some 2nd round guys. Let's do it that way.
Even better.
So we're not, just giving, retread answers.
We could call it the less than obvious studs.
Right. If you want me to go later than that, I'll just go down through the list.
Just some guys that you think.
Here's some 2nd round guys, and they were kind of earlier 2nd round guys that I really liked. Jaden Higgins, a wide receiver from Iowa State, I thought was a 1st round pick all day. Runs well, routes well on tape, catches the ball well. I mean, everything you're looking for in a receiver. I'm not really sure. I don't think there's a big difference between him, Teterow, and McMillan, to be honest with you. I love Jaden Higgins, and Houston got him at 34. Travion Henderson, the Patriots got at 38. I think he's going to be their Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to be their complimentary guy. A guy that I was really excited to see go so early because I was really high on him, and the reporting was that he wasn't going to go that early, is the defensive tackle TJ Sanders from South Carolina. He went to Buffalo. I think that's a good fit for him. They know how to use like a little bit of a smaller defensive tackle. He's a player that I think is going to be really good in 3 or 4 years. Mason Taylor is kind of a big name. The LSU offensive tackle went to the Jets. I think he's going to get a ton of touches. Those are guys that I think if you're looking in the 2nd round that, those
have
guys
a good chance.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say this too. I'm going to go with every time I get a chance to talk about this guy, I'm going to talk about him. Devin Neal went in the 6th round, the running back from Kansas. Look at his production in college. Look at his athletic profile in terms of his testing.
Yeah.
And tell me the difference between him and Kareem Hunt. I don't see it.
Yeah.
I just don't see the difference. And you're talking about a guy you're getting that late. And I see Kellen Moore in New Orleans. He's going to run the ball everywhere he goes. He's going to be another guy that, I think there's going to be enough touches between him and Alvin Kamara that he's going to be a player for them going forward. And I'll give you another one because I hate going too early. So a 4th round pick. And I know that they took Quinshon Judkins, right?
Yep.
And maybe it won't be with the Browns in 4 years from now. Dylan Sampson, the running back from Tennessee, is a dude.
See, that he was there when the Panthers took Etienne, and that's who I wanted them to take. But, again, I guess they feel like Etienne is a different type of running back. But when Sampson was sitting there, I
get that argument.
That's what got me. That's what ticked me off a little bit. That kid's a beast.
I'm with you. And then some guys that fell, like Jalen Royals, the Utah State kid who fell probably because he was hurt. I mean, he went in the 4th round. Now he's on a Kansas City team, and he may not make the roster. I mean, they have so many bodies at wide receiver. Right. We're going to see what happens.
Right.
But Jalen Royals would be a guy that I think when I watch his tape, and I thought he had a better Senior Bowl than other people did. I'll be honest about it. I thought he's better at the Senior Bowl than people did. You watch his tape, and you were playing with Patrick Mahomes, and you got Andy Reid calling plays. He's one of those guys you keep an eye on. Maybe he sneaks into the lineup, and you're like, how did they get this guy in the 4th round?
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah.
The temptations. I mean, I think Genty's going to be awesome. I think Genty's going to be awesome. But I don't want to go with
just the easy to everyone.
It's too easy.
I get it. And one last question, because they'll kill me if I don't. We've got a Cleveland Brown fan group that watches the show on TV and on our podcast. If we've made it through the interview without talking about Shedeur Sanders, which is great. If I'm gonna ask you, which by the way, I thought he was one of the top 3 quarterbacks. So I was shocked as anybody when he fell as far as he did. But and I wasn't high on Gabriel. So this question kind of leads to that. Take Flacco out of it, because everyone would probably guess they start a veteran at the beginning of the year. But let's take him out of there. If the Browns are going to start one of these rookies, which one will start on day one? And again, that's a hypothetical, obviously, because they also have Pickett, who they didn't pick up the 5th-year option on. So I guess they could always cut him fairly easily if they wanted to. They're not going to cut one of the 2 rookies. But, what were your thoughts?
Between Gabriel and Sanders is what you're asking me, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I had Sanders way ahead of Gabriel. I mean, way ahead. Yeah. I had Sanders and he was all over my board. He was much higher than this at times. But at the end of it, after talking to people, and Sanders did not play well at the end of the year. He just did not play well at the end of the year. He got into some really bad habits, and then they mismanaged everything after the draft. We don't have to dive back into this. That being said, let's just talk about the player and the potential now that that's all behind us. Sanders to me is a more accurate thrower than Gabriel. I thought Gabriel, when I was surprised when I went back and watched Gabriel, that he wasn't. The thing about Gabriel that was interesting is we all thought he had kind of a weaker arm. He doesn't. He has kind of a stronger arm, to be honest with you.
Right.
And then he was pinpoint accuracy, and that's not the case. He doesn't have great accuracy. He misses more than you would think. They're both, I will say this, and this is why they're good fits for Kevin Stefanski. Both of those guys process well for college quarterbacks. Both of those guys. Now, again, we're talking about any other thing. When there's a difference between taking high school math and college math. There's a big jump in all of that stuff. So processing at the college level is a lot easier. But what they were given and what they were asked to handle, both of those guys are really good at it and really good at getting the ball out. I think Sanders is more more accurate passer. I also like, to be honest with you, I think that, obviously Gabriel played at some big programs. He, after UCF, he was at Oklahoma for a year, and then he was at Oregon for a year, and he was in the playoffs. So he's had some pressure. I'm not sure, Sanders gets knocked a lot for the circus around him. But if I'm drafting a quarterback and I'm wondering, can he handle, a lot of attention and a lot of pressure? The flip side of all that stuff is Shedeur Sanders he's had the spotlight on him for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Or 2 years at least.
Yeah.
And he's shown that he can still play at a high level with all that stuff going on. So there's that aspect of it. I think Sanders is big. I would, if you're asking me with the game on the line, and I think you should do this when you're evaluating quarters and putting them in head. With the game on the line, who am I taking? I'm taking Sanders. And I like Gabriel. That's not a knock on Gabriel. I just think Sanders has a slight edge there. So to me, I would think that Sanders would be the starter if you had to go between those 2 guys, despite the fact that you took, and I can't believe this, they took Dylan Gabriel a full 2 rounds. The other thing is, for your Browns fans there, maybe they can explain this to me, because I am trying to figure this out. What's your plan here? Because when you trade back and you don't take Travis Hunter and you pick up another first-round pick for the next year, I think most people, myself included, jump to the idea of they're going to get their quarterback in 2026, and now they have the ammunition to do it. And if that's your plan, then why are you not building up your roster as much as you can? And you have Flacco and Pickett. You already have those guys. It's not like you need it. It's not like they're in a better position than Pittsburgh is.
Oh, absolutely.
They didn't have to go out and get them. And they went out and got 2 and won in the 3rd round when there was a lot of good players on the board. So actually, it's funny because I look at the Browns draft. I like a lot of their players. I think they killed it in a lot of areas. But it's the same thing that on a low, not as intense a level. How are you managing that position? Because it was the same thing when I was looking at the Falcons last year, and I was like, why are they drafting Michael Penix this early after you go out and spend all that money on Kirk Cousins? Now, listen, it worked out for Atlanta. So maybe Cleveland knows something that no one else knows. Yeah. But I did look at that, and I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, Steve, I could ask you 100 more questions, but I know you got to go. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. Tell everybody where they can get you on social media.
At Mensch on Instagram and on X, and I'm always on the McShay Show with Todd McShay, trying to correct all his mistakes. I hope people tune in and have a good time with that show. And I really appreciate you having me on. Kevin Weidel,
my boy,
man, when he speaks very highly of you, and when Kevin Weidel speaks highly of someone, it means a lot to me. and I'm disappointed that I didn't get on earlier. I should have done it during the draft. And
I know you were slammed.
But I will say this: I'm glad I got to come on now, and I appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you. And we'll do it again, hopefully. And if you're ever in Charlotte, man, hit me up. I think Weidl's family is trying to take over the whole NFL, with the yeah. brothers and then the sons. I mean, in 15 years from now, oh, man, they really are. And talking football with you reminds me of talking with Kevin, because he's so passionate about the players and the film. And again, I could talk to you for hours on it. Kevin's a good dude. But thanks again for taking the time, man. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.